There is a quiet but powerful shift that happens when someone who once held emotional distance suddenly realizes the other person has stopped reaching, stopped explaining, and stopped waiting. This realization doesn't arrive loudly. It comes in waves of silence, absence, and unanswered expectations. While it may look like nothing is happening on the surface, internally, something begins to unravel. This is not about revenge or validation. It's about understanding the psychological and emotional process that unfolds when an avoidant attachment style encounters permanent emotional withdrawal. What follows is a breakdown of the 7 internal stages that occur when the pursuit ends for good. It begins quietly, almost deceptively, with a sense of relief that feels familiar and safe. The absence of messages, explanations, or emotional bids creates an open space that initially feels like freedom. There is no pressure to respond, no need to manage expectations, no emotional pull demanding attention. Daily routines continue uninterrupted, and on the surface everything seems lighter. This relief reinforces the belief that distance is necessary, even healthy, and that emotional separation restores balance. The mind interprets the silence as proof that independence has been reclaimed. But slowly, something subtle starts to shift. The quiet feels different this time. It isn't chosen. The absence no longer carries the comfort of control. The usual emotional background noise is gone, and instead of peace, there is a faint sense of disorientation. Moments arise where the lack of contact feels unfamiliar rather than calming. There is a hesitation when checking a phone, not expecting a message but noticing the habit is still there. The nervous system remains alert, as if waiting for something that never arrives. Thoughts begin to drift back unexpectedly, not with longing at first, but with mild confusion. The mind tries to categorize the situation as temporary, assuming the silence will break on its own. When it doesn't, the uncertainty grows. Familiar emotional patterns no longer apply, and that creates an internal mismatch. The usual reassurance of knowing the other person is still emotionally available, even at a distance, has vanished. This stage is marked by denial wrapped in calm. There is an insistence that nothing is wrong, that this is simply how things should be. Yet underneath, there is a growing awareness that something has ended without discussion or closure. The relief begins to feel hollow, like a pause that stretches too long, creating a quiet tension that can't be named. The discomfort deepens as the realization settles in that the distance is no longer self-directed. What once felt like a personal boundary now feels like an external limit. The familiar sense of control begins to slip, and with it, the confidence that connection can be re-entered at will. There is a subtle panic that doesn't fully surface, but lingers beneath the calm exterior. The assumption that emotional access is permanent, even when unused, starts to weaken. Small triggers amplify this shift. Silence that once felt neutral now feels pointed. The absence of reactions, questions, or attempts to reconnect creates an unexpected imbalance. The dynamic has reversed, and that reversal is deeply unsettling. Independence no longer feels empowering when it's no longer being chosen freely. The sense of authority over the emotional landscape erodes, replaced by a growing awareness that the other person has closed a door. Internally, there is resistance to acknowledging this loss of control. The mind searches for explanations that restore a sense of dominance, minimizing the importance of the connection or reframing the situation as mutual distance. Yet these narratives feel thinner than before. They no longer provide the same emotional insulation. The lack of response from the other side disrupts the internal hierarchy where detachment equaled safety. There is also an emerging tension between pride and insecurity. Reaching out feels risky, even threatening to identity. Not reaching out feels equally destabilizing. This internal stalemate creates restlessness and uneasy awareness that the power balance has shifted permanently. The option to retreat and return on familiar terms no longer exists, and that realization quietly destabilizes the emotional foundation that once felt unshakable. Curiosity begins to surface in a way that feels intrusive rather than intentional. Thoughts circle back repeatedly, not with emotional warmth, but with a persistent need to understand what went wrong. The mind replays past interactions, searching for a specific moment where the shift occurred. This is unfamiliar territory because attention was once directed outward, away from emotional entanglement. Now it turns inward, questioning patterns that were never examined before. There is a growing awareness that the silence is not accidental. The lack of engagement carries intention, and that realization creates discomfort. Questions arise that were once dismissed as irrelevant. Why did the connection end so completely? Why was there no attempt to repair or re-engage? These thoughts don't come with clear answers, only with an increasing sense that something meaningful has been lost without being acknowledged. This stage is marked by mental loops. The same scenarios replay, not to assign blame, but to regain a sense of predictability. The unknown feels threatening. Certainty, even painful certainty, would feel safer than this open-ended absence. The need to understand becomes less about the other person and more about restoring internal stability. There is also a subtle shift in perception. Moments that were once minimized start to feel heavier in hindsight. Emotional availability that was taken for granted now stands out in memory. The connection begins to look different when viewed through absence rather than proximity. What once felt optional now feels significant. Despite this, direct emotional engagement still feels risky. The curiosity stays internal, unspoken, confined to private thoughts. There is a tension between wanting answers and fearing what those answers might reveal about vulnerability, dependence, and loss. The mind keeps circling, trying to resolve the unanswered questions without fully stepping into the emotional weight they carry. Emotions begin to surface in ways that are difficult to control, often emerging unexpectedly and in inconvenient moments. Feelings that were long suppressed or ignored start to leak through, bypassing the usual defenses that once kept them contained. Irritability may appear over minor annoyances, restlessness creeps in during quiet moments, and sudden waves of nostalgia or longing hit without warning. These emotions are fragments of what was once tightly managed, now bubbling up because the familiar patterns of avoidance no longer provide their usual buffer. The emotional leakage is confusing and uncomfortable. There is a simultaneous desire to push it away and a compulsion to notice it. Memories and past interactions replay vividly, sometimes accompanied by physical sensations like tightness in the chest or a hollow feeling in the stomach. These sensations are unsettling because they demand attention, forcing a confrontation with feelings that were previously denied. Attempts to rationalize or dismiss these emotions often fail, leaving a sense of vulnerability that feels foreign. At the same time, the mind attempts to contain the spillover. Distraction becomes a tool, as if keeping busy could prevent feelings from fully surfacing. Yet, moments of stillness inevitably bring them back, stronger and more insistent. The emotions are not fully understood, and their sudden appearance is disorienting. Even small triggers, a song, a scent, a place, can unleash a flood of memories and sentiments that had been carefully compartmentalized. This stage is also marked by subtle self-reflection. There is an internal dialogue that questions why these feelings were suppressed for so long and what they reveal about personal needs and attachments. The realization that emotional suppression is no longer effective creates unease. It highlights a previously hidden vulnerability and forces a recognition of the depth of attachment and care that was once minimized or ignored, making the internal landscape feel increasingly unstable.